Mark.
Cool.
Yes, Mark.
Wow, this is a surprise. I was not expecting this. Just gonna walk around with some gamma and locate a well, right? But yeah, no, my name's Mark Burr, B-U-R-R, with Primary Water Technologies, and it's pretty amazing to be here in California, especially Southern California. This paradigm comes out of California in the basic about 90 years ago, and a couple of gentlemen, one Steve Reese I'll talk about, another one Vern Cameron. Vern Cameron watched his grandmother witch their homestead in Escondido, California in 1924, and he said the rest of his life I'm gonna figure out how dowsing works, and he was incredible, developed devices. They worked with him in World War II to try to find, spider holes and this and that. And I just got to meet his disciple, Bill Cox's wife. She's still alive up in Goleta, or actually up in Ojai. And I call her the first lady of primary water. She's been around it like 50 years. They were dowsers, and Bill Cox was phenomenal. I discovered he talked all over the world at conferences for radionics and psychotronics and all that. He could visualize and predict the driller going down boreholes, like formation change, and watch for first water and back into hard rock. I mean, that's some pretty incredible remote viewing. So they were really unique, but being dowsing, that's sort of paranormal. So if you're in that, you don't get, even though you have results all over the place, we can show wells all over California and around the world, these guys located, pumping away decades later, some of them in the thousands of gallons a minute, with no correlation to rainfall. The only thing that affects them is usually tectonic events. That's about it to change the static heads. Always under pressure, always extremely high quality water. So yeah, coming down here and going into these volcanics where everybody's like, oh, there's no water, or hit or miss, it's just a dream. Because I was in Valley Center on Tuesday, up here above Marietta yesterday, and I mean it's prolific water. It's water that's made in the earth, rising, and so forth. So that's really what the primary water paradigm is. A gentleman named Stephen Reese came over from Germany in the 1920s, and he was working in mines here. He was trained in mining. In fact, go back to World War I, he was the youngest POW in World War I in England. His father had been an admiral in Kaiser's Navy at that time, and so he was an interesting and prominent guy. Was released from POW there after World War I, studied mining and metallurgy and so forth in Germany, and comes to the U.S. in the 20s. Ends up working with Herbert Hoover and his sons all around the West. They were tremendous mining engineers around the country. And he's here in a desert going, why are you bisecting mine? When you're mining, you're bisecting water you cannot outpump, right? Comstock Lode, Tombstone, Eureka, Nevada, all the way down through Chile. Like, where is this water coming from? He, being a geochemist also, a very good geochemist, was in a mine, and basically the Genesis well for us, we call it, is south of Las Vegas in the El Dorado Canyon. If you've ever been there, it's little Nelson, Nevada, and they have little cool mine tours there now. Most mining stopped there about 1970s, but I've seen a lot of the claims are being revived now that our gold prices and silver are back up where they are. So they're mining, they're bringing water. You could drive down there and you see the Colorado River. They're pumping that water up for their mining operations. And he's already developed this idea that I believe I'm seeing water being made in these mines coming out of the rock. It has a clearly different geochemistry than our rain-fed well here and our rainwater. So finally he says, I'm gonna dig down for this. He doesn't even drill for it because he's like, they're gonna think I'm nuts wasting all this machinery and gas. So they literally pickaxe down and they strike the water, and the guys are scrambling out of the hole so they won't drown in there. It comes up free-flowing, and to this day that well is known as one of the great wells of the area. It just created a lagoon until they got it under control. You go there now, it's a bit sad. It's just surrounded with chain link, and it hasn't been used in years. One of the great wells that's like, who needs it now, right? And it's all just green and just stuff. You could tell the water's just right at the surface still on that well. And so right then and there, that was 1934. And at that point he said, I figured this out. Earth creates water. And he dedicates the rest of his life until 1985 when he passes away in Escondido, although he lived up in Simi Valley and Sulphur Mountain for a long time. 50 years and they say 753 documented wells around the world. Went to Israel in 1958-59 and located the wells in southern Israel that led to the development of Eilat, their port there on the Aqaba, Gulf of Aqaba. They gave him the highest civilian prize in Israel for that work. And it's all documented in the Jerusalem Post. The first year they're kind of making fun of, like, who's this like geologist who thinks there's water and rock? That valley's called the Arava Valley. So the next year after he strikes, huge flows, enough in the paper, enough for 100,000 people. Wow. Where there was nothing down there. They say, water from Arava rock, right? Beautiful headline. There it was, right? This guy found water in granites and rocks. You know, so he goes through, and by the 1950s, he saves Sparklets. You guys know Sparklets is California. Their wells are going dry in a drought. He goes over there and says, you know what? Take that well and drill it deeper, down around 800 whatever feet. And today those wells are still pumping away. I think it's owned by Danone Group or whatever. So you talk about a cash cow for, that was 1953. So how many years is that, of that well just producing away? So he's locating all these wells, all in the papers of Southern California. So what happens is, well, we've got a new dam and river to do, right? To dam up in the canal system, which was the Feather River Project. So in the late 50s, that's a big issue here. Another river, you're going to take water from Northern California to thirsty LA. And he's going saying, I've got water everywhere. I've got wells. In fact, I can go up into all along this future canal of yours, build your canal. We know we're not going to stop you. But one day you might need the backup wells you need. Right, like last year when the Colorado River was at its lowest since they built the dams, and you need them. But they fought, threw them into court. Ultimately, the Feather River bond was passed, and the rest is history. Didn't stop him from locating wells, but a book was written at that time about this by I think it was a UCLA professor, and it's called New Water for a Thirsty World, and it covers his extraordinary exploits in locating wells and gets deep into the science at the time. There were numerous Nobel laureates in Southern California at the time. They went to many of those guys and said, hey, and most of them were actually out of Europe, and they think very differently of water than we do in Europe, not stuck to one river and its whole monopolistic paradigm. And they had all agreed, and we're talking about isotopes and how it could be created, and pressures and temperatures in the earth, and catalysts, and so forth. And so really, if you read the book, they had they were close and missing a few things, but it was a clear representation of the science at the time that it was kind of obvious that our planet's a water planet, blue planet. Our oceans could not have come from asteroids and comets over, gazillions of years, but it's coming up from our planet. Well, since then, we've gone to the bottom of the oceans, and what do we see? Massive water coming in from our very thin mafic sea bottoms, right? Massive water. El Nino, La Nina is a water event. Millions of volcanoes. Every year, go talk to Johannes Kepler, who taught us all these cycles 500 years ago, right? And every year there's a pumping of the earth out. In years where it's massive pumping, the ocean rises 12 inches for millions of square miles. That's still small in our size of our oceans, and it floats that hot water towards South America, and it affects, like now finally we're like, give us some more El Nino. We need some water, right? And you get an El Nino year. Typically then it pumps less, and you have the La Nina, so it's not enough heat coming over here. They've gone down there and they know that whole Southwest Pacific area, massive one. It's a water event pumping out from our planet, right? And white smokers, black smokers, they call them white smokers, or white silica coming out. So you wonder why, if you go to a beach in Florida, it's a limestone peninsula. So when limestone erodes, shouldn't you have a limestone beach? It's all white silica from our oceans that gets pushed up on by the tides. That's all made under the ocean. The black smokers are all mineralized, right, coming up. So all of that's, they're seeing now at the bottom of the ocean really with a lot of what's going on. Some of the biggest science is happening down there. They couldn't get there 60, 70 years ago. We can get all the way down there with submersibles now. So the clear evidence is there. I don't have it, but there's a book, a collection of geophysical studies published in 2006. So we're almost 20 years away. So it's not new. Oh, Earth's deep water cycle. These are peer-reviewed scientists and universities around the U.S. and around the world describing our planet and a basically 400-mile deep hydrozone where they believe all of the pressures, temperatures, and catalysts like ringwoodite are available to get hydrogen and oxygen to combine under the electrical mechanical forces of our Earth to produce H2O in all its formats, right? H2O is crystalline, like our crystalline basement, granite and basement, right? It's in there. You take a block of granite into an oven and it will lose weight. Why? Because that's the water you're just participating out. If you take a block of granite down to the equivalent of 9 miles of pressure and temperature, it's 9% water. If you've ever held a block of granite, imagine it's almost 1/10 water. You're like, you're kidding me. Yes, that's how much water. And imagine the pressures and temperatures there getting squeezed up and out, right? So they actually have a new term for that water coming out. Mantle rain. So we have our cycle up here of rainwater, watershed, water table, aquifer. All right, and if you follow that down, you start minimizing your chances of success of finding new water. But if you imagine the water being created under all those circumstances, rising, raining out from the mantle into our fractured crust, where up here it comes up as steam, a lot of it, right? Geothermal is trying to hit it as steam. Earth's natural steam engine, no need for a coal plant, right? There it is, and they're trying to get to those hydrothermal points, and so they call it superheated rock. What happens when that steam cools? Hot, right? Lung, cool plane of glass, condensation. That's there. There's phase change into liquid water. We're seeing around the world massive recharge. Southern Jordan. They have a huge project to drill wells in the southern Jordan desert, volcanics, bringing up almost 200 million cubic liters a year now to Amman. And I've been there in that desert too many times, there's no water seeping from the surface to 2,000 feet. Okay, that's how the wells are about 550 meter depths, plus or minus 2,000. Sorry. 90 whatever percent of that's evaporated, and then it's getting used by the soil or runoff, and then you can't go through hard rock with whatever's remaining to 2,000 feet. So, right, so massive recharge. Where is that coming from? Okay, again, it's kind of obvious. It's coming from Earth's deep water cycle. Actually, so on the back of my card is from the Primary Water Institute here in California, which was formed by Paul Power, who was a disciple of Stephen Rees. And we show that the atmospheric cycle here, deep Earth's water cycle, and they cross over. So the whole thing of prove it can be a bit tough.
I printed this here if you wanted to have people.
Awesome.
This is the hydrologic system and primary water.
There it is, right?
There's a bigger one.
All right, this one's a little newer. I don't have a problem with it. It's just when we're moving from Earth's deep water cycle, and Olson out there, and she's a big is it Roush follower?
Wilhelm Reich.
Wilhelm Reich follower, and stuff like that. She's putting it as Earth energy. I get that, but right now let's keep it at like elementary level for these politicians and bureaucrats to say, look, we have Earth's deep water cycle here, and they overlap with this, right? And then the greater concept is Earth energies around that. And so, how can you prove it if you have to drill into the earth and you're going through surface water, you're going through the first aquifer to get to your primary water source? Yeah, it can be done in good drilling and casing as you go and all of that. And of course, sometimes our water reaches the surface. We give it a really technical term, right? Spring! Well, let's go find spring water. Right? In fact, a lot of our spring bottled water is drilled. Okay? Those folks who went up to Palomar Mountain a long time ago and went, man, there's nothing higher than that to create an artesian flow there. That's Earth's water coming out spring at the top. And then they'll drill a well in the area. Yep, same water and bottle it as spring water, right? And by the way, to bottle something as spring water, it's pretty simple. FDA says less than 500 parts per million, right? And then less than 1,000, you call it mineral water. And it used to be 1,000 and 2,000. But I'm guessing some little organization, association got in there and said, make it a little harder so we can make a few more bucks, right? That's it. It doesn't have to say what the properties are, what's the negative charge, what's the alkylates are, what's the pH, nothing, right? It's just like 500, 1,000, right? So, I mean, I've been out in the Salton Sea, and they had drilled absolutely on the San Andreas Fault, which ends there. It was over 3,000 parts per million. We wouldn't drink it. It was pretty hard. They were growing date palms. I speak Spanish. I'm talking to the farm manager there. He says, the fertilizer's in the water. We don't even fertilize. Yeah. It's all coming in its, appropriate state, as you guys know, of putting water and activating it, and all those minerals are ready and activated for the use that those plants are just going, bring it, right? There it was. It was like, and the guys I was with were desert land developers, so they're on the phone with the Coachella Valley Water Authority, and they keep calling their buddy. And finally, they're putting him on speaker, and they say, what about this? What about that? He goes, time out, guys. All I know is the Colorado River profile, water profile. Here's your water guy for your whole valley going. And he was just telling them all, it's all alkaline down there. Forget drilling. It's alkaline, right? And I went to other smaller wells down there, and I'm like, they're growing fruit on them. Then they're not alkaline. They're great wells, right? And these guys were just like scratching their head. I said, well, you're dealing with people inside of a system, and they can't see out because that's all they're taught is this Colorado River water. Since when? So that went up in the 1930s. Dam, canal, aqua, and then municipality, basically. The biggest is Met of Los Angeles, right? Now all that system was set up. Those are each individual monopolies. And you can't go, I want my Verizon water. My water's no good. I'm calling the T-Mobile water, right? You got your water right here. You getting it from whoever's delivering, and that's it. You can't go, you can go argue and do this or that and try to change it. That's it. So it's a monopoly system, and monopolies do what? They crowd out competition, and innovation gets tossed aside, and it's the same thing that goes through that, the same kind of thinking. So we're just asking, today is like groundwater needs to be modernized. It has to have a proper seat at the table. One river or even two can only give so much water even in the best of times, and how many times the population when those were built? 3, 4, 5 out here out west? So all the different offtakes along that watershed, of course it's going to give less. So what about the groundwater component? So I refer people to, what happened in oil or gas, and not just natural gas, but hydrogen and helium now, right? The old ideas of Dr. Thomas Gold, if you ever read anything by Tommy Gold, go read it. He was 70 years ahead of his time, Austrian, Cambridge University, England, and then Cornell. And he'd always dive in a new field, and all these people like, why are you studying our area? You're a physicist or whatever. What do you mean? He's like, scientists should study anything and everything, right? But every over-specialization gets people very protective of their turf. So he came in and he wrote whole books on the outgassing of the earth. That's totally proven now, the outgassing. In fact, the number one outgas is what? Water vapor. We see that with our GOES 7 satellite. It's geosynchronous, and we see all of our water vapor coming up out of our planet, right? Again, we know it is geothermal, it's there. The French, they used to go out in the mornings, French farmers, and they'd watch the wisps on their farms, and they'd walk and walk, and it would teach them where the veins were that they would drill down into for their next well. Yeah. They would watch that. 500 years ago, Agricola called it halitus, which is halitus, right? Halitosis halitus. It's a vapor coming out of the earth. He described it in that book, which was a De Re Metallica, which was a critical book in advancing us into the industrial age and mining and all of that. And in that book, by the way, they show the dowsers running around. Queen Elizabeth heard about them, brought them to England and Wales, and started the mining industry there. So it's kind of funny that we're a bit also the whole paranormal, because a lot of the guys that are primary water are dowsing. To get back to that subject, we all know it can work. I mean, there are 3 out of 4 wells are located by those guys to this day, mostly guys. Although I know a lady who could find a penny in a park up in Kanab, Utah. I mean, you go hide it she'll get the penny. And she's a good water witcher as well. Water witcher, that's not a term that helps us either. I like the Australians. Yeah. Water divining, right? I said water diviner.
There you go.
You know, and my partner there, Rob Gourlay, he's kind of the Paul Power of primary water in Australia. I mean, he's one of their top dowsers, been doing it for years, but he understands the primary water paradigm. Makes it a lot easier when you get that. So the dowser's paradigm of veins is similar. Obviously, they're walking along saying, drill here. You're kind of like, well, you know, my shed's over there, my house over there, and he's like, drill where the water is, not where you wish it to be, and it's right here. So he's, you know, they're seeing those channels, fissures, fractures, what have you, right? The really good ones can predict depth and volume and other characteristics, right? But I've been on some jobs lately, and it kind of skips generations, and then, you know, others don't believe in it, where some dowsers have been missing and not doing a really good job in various parts of California and Arizona and so forth. So all we're doing is bringing in some technologies on this now, which in fact one of them, this one, which I'll show you, was involved in the early days of primary water. And so, you know, if we're going to convince anyone of our paradigm, you know, you just can't put a panel of dowsers in front of your state water authority and get anywhere with them, right? Even though they know those guys are out locating most of the wells in the state, right? So you have to come in with some data. So amazingly, I'm on the web. When I get into this, 10 years ago, I get pitched by a guy at Carlsbad who tells me this whole story. I'm from old Northern California families, and the politics of it, water politics rings a bell, you know, like this makes sense. 6 months of due diligence, and I'm going, this is a real story. It's got a history, it's got its textbook, and it's been pushed aside. Clearly, oil and gas, absolute modernization, mining. We're an extractive industry. And we're still, grandparents would come back, oh, there's the witcher, there's the old rig coming down and drilling down into the hole the same old way with a diesel rig as decades and decades ago. So I get a hold of a website, and they're talking in Germany, but it was in English, and they're talking about California City Project. Well, that was one of the big projects of Steve Reese. They were going to develop a whole new Los Angeles in the Mojave Desert, because they knew how much water was there, because he had been locating wells since the 1930s out there with mining companies and other things, right? And so Mendelsohn comes out from Columbia University, where they were into the post-World War II planned cities and all of that. He comes out to LA, he's doing some developments, and he hears about Reese and says, I'm going to develop California City. And this is kind of the fight in the backdrop of the whole Feather River project. And so they're out there, and Reese is in California, German, and he meets a Dr. Armand Bickel. And these guys on the website are talking about this Dr. Armand Bickel, California City. NASA, the guy was in NASA. Sure enough, Operation Paperclip, they brought him over after World War II, Werner von Braun. He ends up in Vandenberg Air Force Base, Lompoc, California, and he's building incredible instruments for the space race and out testing them on the weekends. And meets Reese, because Reese is by then up in Sulphur Mountain, Simi Valley. He locates the wells that lead to the development of Simi Valley. And another amazing story, they're bought for $1 million, just the wells, because they're on size like this. It was the most expensive purchase of land in California up to that point, by Clint Murchison, Texas oilman, founder of Dallas Cowboys, who came up, heard about it, and then they end up developing that whole area, because everyone was saying, it's all sulfur. It's all sulfur water up here. He's like, no, it's not. And he was believing that was actually part of the big Garlock fault system. So the San Andreas comes down to Mojave, and there's this huge cross fault. In fact, it goes into the ocean, and if you go out Port Hueneme, you can go out there, and the Spanish knew this. You could clean out top of the water, drink it, straight out, pure water. That's how much upwelling of water toward the Channel Islands is coming up and out. And there are upwellings like that all around the world of this fresh water coming off of these faults. So there's one. And you're thinking like, Catalina's arguing over their desal plant and this and that, and everybody doesn't want desal. How about put a pipe out there in the ocean? California, wake up! Hey, there's water out there. Everybody knows it. Like, put the pipe. That's a lot. You know, you may not like it, but it's a lot less worse than doing all this other and $100 million, billion this and that, right? By the way, Catalina Island, it was Steve Reese who located wells on there before they did the desal plant. And they're trying to figure out what to do over there because it's getting old. Do we refurb it? Of course, a lot of people are saying you're just messing up the whole ocean area there. You're changing the whole chemistry of that area, right? And So somebody called me, I showed him all the study. Who was it? Yes, somebody knew about, that I met on this trip, knew about the wells up there. George Patton, General Patton's family owned much of Catalina. That's why he knew about Reese and used him. So anyway, fast forward to the 50s and 60s, and he meets Armand Bickel. And so Bickel's out there with basically the Geiger counter technologies, right, that he advances. And he builds a gamma ray scintillation counter. And for detecting mostly minerals. Obviously there was a big uranium craze because of our atomic age, and so guys would buy that from him and go out. And so the original one looks, I got one off eBay. It's my Christmas present, came early this year, absolutely insane. And I got it, and there was the original one, little dials on it and everything. And so I called Robert Mayer, who makes these for me now in Germany. He's been doing it 35 years. I'm like, you think you get it working? He's go, oh yeah, it's good condition. I can get that working. And dials, they put it here, and you had to have a car battery around your neck to operate it. Whoa. So Paul Power, who was the young guy on the team back then, and disciple of Steve Reese, had to wear the car battery. He was a Hungarian immigrant after the 56 revolution, right? So don't mention the word Russian with him, or he'll go off for half an hour in Russian. But he ended up at Ojai, of all places. Ojai is, I don't know if y'all know Ojai, Meditation Mount. It's our primary water mecca. It's even, Davina lives there now. You're like, what? What is this place, right? So he's up there, and he meets him because, Bickel's at Lompoc, and sure enough, I stayed 2 nights, San Clemente. This guy contacts me out of nowhere saying, hey, I was on the Bickel team in the 70s. I think he was Cal Poly, and he heard about it, wanted to learn about it, and they were gearing up for an Eastern Zagros expedition in Iran, because one of the guys on the team was Murad Egbal from Iran. And so he's telling me the stories, and he's like, Bickel would just call me, say, hey, or Reese would, hey, I'm going down to Escondido, I'm going on a project, come out with me. And he'd learn what he was doing. And he said he was carrying that. And so the technology was there, absolutely, in those early years, and Reese was using it to locate some extraordinary wells. And then Paul said, well, I learned how to douse because I didn't want to carry the battery around my neck. And he learned from none other than Ralph Harris, who was General Patton's dowser across North Africa in World War II. Oh. A good old Tennessee boy. Famous story, right? Ralph Harris. Right? They land on the beach of Morocco, and they're looking for water, and they're, what? We can't find any. And so he said, there's a good old boy, Tennessee boy in my unit says he can find water. Patton, get him in here. What do you need? Willow stick, sir. So what does Patton do, of course? He chops a whole willow tree in France, flies it in, drops it on the beach.
Right.
Guy's like, that's all I need, thanks. Thank you, sir. And guess what? He doused wells all the way across North Africa. Ralph Harris. So anyway, the story's amazing, and Paul learns to douse from him. I'm not saying that's the easy way out. I get it. I can douse. I have dowsing techniques. You kind of cannot get into the water business if you don't, water hunting. And in South Africa, just a couple months ago, these guys will walk with a bottle of water 3/4 full. There's the water. You see it all. Pendulums in Africa kind of put wristbands and they'll watch the pendulum. Arabs are interesting, like up in Kurdistan, they walk barefoot. They just believe, they don't have kind of a crutch. They feel like they can kind of just feel those geopathic zones, right? They call them Khabir al-Ma, the wise man of water. So this was the tech that I found and related back to Bickel and back to Reese and some of the biggest projects we had in California. And like I say, it's just collecting background gamma. It's now not running off a car battery, 4 AA's, and it's counting impulses per second. And the concept for water is really simple. Water blocks, dampens, absorbs natural gamma ray emission. So I'm looking for what? Lows. And I'm looking for patterns of lows. So we walked this property yesterday after we did the Murrieta project, right? And you'll see the pattern on that. And it's a neat paradigm. We typically like high areas because we see those as having been pushed up by Earth's natural hydraulics in the first place. And oftentimes those on maps will show there's vents when all that, especially here, all these volcanics, there's all vents everywhere actually. Those are fractures going actually quite deep. That water that's coming up, our mantle rain hitting our crust, is working its way through there and coming up. Those, so we love it, and then you can gravity flow from there, the whole bit. The paradigm, it's a beautiful paradigm. I was in Kenya, because I've been based in Dubai the last 2 years, and they had a requiem for Paul Power. He passed away last year, and he located some wells there that just shocked you. Over 10 years later, up in the Machakos Highlands, it's a free-flowing well of just purest water you can imagine. It's the middle of a drought. We're drying up there, driving, and we're seeing dry corn and just, you know, miserable drought. That whole hillside, how many thousand people on that one well, just lush. I mean, he doused, but he had Reese's brain, the hard part, just realizing it's there and rising in the first place and looking for where it's going structurally. Bioindicators, those guys are really good. Rocks, even minerals at the surface. You know, I was at Hualapai Mountain in Arizona at the start of the trip. We're on this property, and we walk up on an area, and Ryan is with me out of Las Vegas. Ryan Antilla, he's one of my partners. When I was in Emirates, he was doing a lot of work here. And he said, Mark, it's this huge drop. You walk up in the zone, it's all brown, small, volcanic little rocks, right? And you're going in the drop, and then what do you see? All this spill of quartz, beautiful quartzes. There's nothing that eroded that right there. That's what it came up and out of. It's telling you, hello, right there. And just the drop, then survey. So with this, it picked it up. And then with a passive seismic device, because you know, you can get surface maps of geology or even gamma, and at some point you're like, what's down there? Yes, there's geophysics that can do that. It's very laborious.
So the quartz. There's quartz around here.
Right? A ton.
What does that tell you?
Oh no, we're looking for quartz, we're looking for specks of gold, if you know what you're looking for.
Does that mean primary water's probably there?
Well, think of this. Under what conditions is quartz made? You kind of go, watch that rock, man, come back in a year, that's going to be quartz next year. I know, right? Quartz is what, like 1,700 pounds. You grow it, you can do it in an autoclave inside of water with a crystal, pressure and temperature, right? And that was, synthetic quartz was made in 1958. So we know exactly the conditions, and it's intense catastrophic conditions that never occur on the surface of our planet, except maybe at one period. But at the depths under 4 or 5 miles of ocean water, that's all the pressure, temperature in water that can be made. So when I talk about a lot of the discoveries being made at the bottom of the oceans, when you look at your basalts here, and there's just solid, compacted, right, silica. There's no bubbles in it. I mean, the pressure to make that is insane. They're seeing that being made now at the bottom of the oceans. The mid-oceanic ridge basalts are coming up out of these fracture zones, and the compact and the pressure of the water is so intense, they are non-vesiculated, no bubbles. Ergo, how do you think this was made? Not just wait a million years, yeah, that's going to be basalt. Wait another no, that's pressures, intense catastrophic pressures. So the implications of that every rock has water in it. I mean, this is, you look at petrology when you get into this, because like, wow, you know, we're rock drillers. I got to look at rocks. I look at minerals, right? You're like, they don't know there's water in rock. Like, the implications are what? Water is made from a solution, not a melt. Right? Melt. There's no there's magma theory. It's so absurd. It was literally people observing like Vesuvius going, wow, the internal of the earth is so hot. It's amazing. Oh, you know, and then like really smart physicists went, if it was that hot, we'd all been dead and burned a long time ago. Okay? All that's being made very near surface. Okay? What is it? Enceladus and all of that. They have earth tides of like 300, 400 feet every day, and it is the most active volcanic celestial body, right? What's our earth tide? Why is it not in textbooks? 50 years ago they knew this with all the satellites. Every day right here, this crust raises 8, 10 to 12 inches depending on the time of the year. Anybody know that? So if you're like 6 foot in the morning, you're like 7 foot at 1 o'clock, right? It's rising imperceptibly. The sun is kind of like our bigger gravitational body, and the moon does give us our ocean tides, but sun too, when they're both lined up, holy smoke, right? You get the big ones. Well, the sun is lifting, because they say we're swimming on magma or whatever in our continents, right? And it's lifting and settling it, right? Imagine the torquing and pressure going on every single day, and the moon and our other celestial bodies having their effects on us, cracking our crust. So our crust is massively fractured, and that water, we're looking for it. Drillers may not heard of primary water, want to get into science, but when you talk about fissure water, drillers going, yeah, fissure water. Let's get, there's a lot, and on their bore logs, fractured basalt water, first water, whatever, right? They know, get down on those fractures, right? But a lot of them, I just saw a bore log in Valley Center, they went 1,000 feet. They must have been going, give me another 100, give me another 100, discount the next 100, 1,000 feet. Well, just half a mile away was 365 feet and 120 gallons per minute. And they talk about basins of water. You're like, stick a straw in, you think basin, you think bathtub, so stick a straw, get a water. Man, the guy at the 1,000 foot's going, man, I just spent how much on a dry bore, right? Useless well, and this guy over here's got his 120 gallons a minute. So fissure water, fractures, it's up there. Our planet's crust is thinner than an eggshell is to the egg. And then we're only tapping into that. Okay, oil's going 5-6 miles. We're going 1,000 feet, 2,000 max for our wells, most of it 400, 500, 600 feet. So we're like just tapping at the egg. I call it Earth doing acupuncture. Let Earth release that water. It's good. Because when you don't release it, man, stuff happens, right? It's like a natural lubricant, right? Release it, right? And green your area with the water that's from your area, carrying the microbes from your area. That's the healthiest thing. I tell people about water, get the local spring water as local to you as you can get. And then go ahead and structure it and activate the hydrogen or whatever, but get it. It usually has the microbes that have built up in that area to you. Parts of, like in Europe, Bulgaria, they believe every spring has a specific resonant frequency that heals certain things. Each one has different healing properties that are coming up out of that natural spring. And of course we know that. People go to hot springs all over, different springs, and they know of the healing powers of the spring. That's water that's made in the earth. Okay, so if you're into Dr. Pollack, fourth phase of water science, some people call H2O just our atmospheric water, H3O2, liquid crystal water, more primary water, and there's a term hydronium that I just discovered, which is out there, it's in the science. It was normally used by astrophysicists to talk about that sort of primordial water. They're also talking about hydronium being deeper water and even purer water. It needs a little more, I'd like to look into that, and it's H3O positive, I believe, that water. And now it's super activated water. Again, some of that sometimes makes it to the surface, and you can find natural occurrences
water,
of it.
right? Is that what they call juvenile water?
Well, there you go, like juvenile. So I got into literature, I'm like, they just have so many names. Plutonic water, juvenile water, archaic water, magmatic water, volcanic water, hydronium, a new one. When they really want to, confuse us, they put it in Greek, right? Dang, I skipped that one. Hypogene, born deep. You're saying born? Wait, what's born mean? You guys are saying now in your little literature, hypogene, it's born deep water. Okay, that's what we're talking about. So that means it's adding at a minimum, which was the name of our textbook, New Water for a Thirsty World. At least it's adding new water. Remember, we could go in and see the tritium, isotopes because of our atomic bombs explode in the atmosphere, showing up in our hydrological cycle. So at least if you went and found this water and it didn't have that, you could say, hey, I'm at least 70 years old, and definitely better than that.
It's juvenile.
Right? It's juvenile water. Or aguas ancianas in Spanish, ancient waters. I mean, the literature's like so full of the terms, it's hilarious. So I've been holding this. This is an amazing device by my other partner, Russian engineer Igor Zuykov, Leningrad School of Mines. Now it's St. Petersburg again. Like our Colorado School of Mines, I mean, top. And they're very cross-trained, and because they got to go out to the Siberias and Arctics of the world. And he has developed, if you're kind of into resonant frequencies, this is called resonant acoustic profiling. And with one sensor, piezoelectric sensor attached, set it on the ground, it can go 2,000 meters. I can do profiles to 7,000 feet. Obviously, we don't want to drill that deep for water. In the Great Artesian Basin of Australia, we did studies down over about 3,000 to 4,000 feet because they hit water there, it comes up free flowing, back since the 1800s. So we're kind of get a feel for what was going on out there. But most of the time, and we're doing it at a high frequency. So 7,200 hertz, which is high, the what do you call them, the seismologists for oil and gas, they're doing like 4.5 hertz, 6.5. So when they ask me that, I'm going, no, we're doing it at high frequency. They're just, the brain is like, what? Because it's resonant. It's like piano, is right, C, and you're listening now to the resonance of these keys. Touch that lower C, right? We're kind of listening to the resonance as we go deeper. Because once you press C, tap the ground and listen, you're getting a huge column of data. You know, maybe missing a little few keys at the surface as you go deeper. So literally, it's just one vertical point. So obviously, in the beginning, I'm usually doing, let's say, 10 paces, and, you know, to get a feel. And then I'm crossing it at 5, 2 meter, 2 spaces, and narrow it down, looking for what? Mechanically weak zone of the Earth, where my gamma told me to go. Gamma's dropping off a cliff, like we're going to go up here and say. And by the way, it was 120 to 60, and 100 feet. I mean, 100%. You know, or 50% drop or 100% increase, depending on how you look at it. In Arizona, 50 feet, what would change your gamma? Two things. One, completely different rock that's emitting different gamma, natural gamma, right? Or water. But even if it's different rock, where there's two rocks, water almost always starts traveling because one's weaker, one's stronger, and they move. With those earth tides, they move separately. So now, I'm going to come up there, survey over it with this guy and say, okay, what are we looking at down there? Is it really deep? Is it not so deep? We're watching these fractures, especially in this geology, come up and trying to catch right on top of it so it releases under pressure. Guess what? Under pressure, could stay free flowing. Then you don't need a pump. That's cool. But usually just a shallow static head, which is great. You're a homesteader, drop your submersible pump, put your solar, and you're off and running. And that's a lot of our work. All these folks fleeing out into get their first 5, 10, 20, 40 acres. And they're usually in the desert out here. And rain capture in the desert. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of looking at them like, hope you got a big jank, because it doesn't, you know, monsoon only comes in July, August, right? And they had a good year last year, but before that, it was hurting. So finally, they kind of give up and go, wow, I could do so much more on that property if I did have a well. But who's there that tell you about a well? It's one you've done your first time your whole life. You call the driller. Oh, the water table in your area is about, 300 feet. Here's what the cost is. Like, but that neighbor has a dry well. That one has really crummy water. That one has a really great well. How can I get that well? You start asking the driller too much, he writes a name and a phone number on a piece of paper. You're like, what's that? The local witcher. Give that guy a call, right? We'll come out and drill your well, have him pick it, right? I mean, that's about it. And we say there's no water, and everything else around the groundwater paradigm is backwards. So they want that good well. We come in and bring this tech and show. If we can, we'll survey that and go, yo, look at that. That's why it's great well. It's over a fracture zone, whatever it may be. Gamma dropped. There it is. We can visualize it with this and find that now on their property and off and running. So that's what I've been up to since I got this around 2015, 16. I was contracting them, and then the resonance acoustic profiling about 2017. Had to rush over to Russia to get it before they put all more sanctions on it. And that was why I also went to Dubai to set up, because I couldn't get money over there anymore. So we set up offshore, so he can get his money there. And we did a bunch of R&D. And so Zarin Leff is here, partner of mine, scientific partner, I call him. And tell us a little about yourself.
I've worked currently to make a living as an outdoor guide in Joshua Tree. I guess I have a diverse background in various subjects, but never felt comfortable going through the path of life which all of my high school classmates did, which I was supposed to do as well, to become an accountant or a doctor or a lawyer or something. And I intuitively, I think, felt something was wrong with science. Over the past year, I guess maybe everything can only happen when it is ready, and whatever balance of forces that make society and reality into what they are also applies on a societal scale. But for me, I've done a deep dive into revisiting everything I ever thought I knew, and it's ongoing, but it seems like when I'm not super busy during the tourist season, I make faster progress, and especially over the last week, literally, I've learned some new things thanks to the internet, largely. You know, there's good and bad there, and I feel kind of sheepish saying, well, I just read some stuff on the internet, but that's kind of what it comes down to.
Yes, Lord, if you know where to look, right?
Combined with personal discernment, that can be a challenge.
When did you first hear about primary water?
Came many years ago,
Yeah.
actually, and along with other things that I've been tangentially aware of for years, but put aside until last year. I contacted you after I came across.
You'd been in touch with Paul Power when he was live and spoken with him.
I talked with Paul Power on the phone. I worked in Yellowstone as a sea kayak guide on Yellowstone Lake for one summer, and just every day looking at the world, and as an interpretive guide being like, what the geologists are telling me doesn't make sense. And I didn't have a lot of alternative explanations at the time. Occasionally I would talk about electric universe theories. Then we had like for example, the fish cooking geyser, what it was called. Back in the day, people would catch a fish and then put the fish in this pot of near boiling water that was surrounded by the cold waters of Yellowstone Lake. So this is clearly a plumbing system bringing hot water up to the same level that this giant cold water lake is at, but separated by only a few feet of fairly impermeable rock. And I thought this was fascinating because I was aware of primary water ideas, and so I called Paul on the phone and talked to him about things, but he told me not how he found the wells. I asked him and assumed it was dowsing, which after talking to Mark sounds correct, but then last year when I saw Mark was doing it with technology, I became very interested, and just for interest's sake, I bought a RAP USB 1, which I used to so far only do a few scientific studies for my own interest around Joshua Tree. My most interesting one so far was on top of a giant rock that has like one fracture going through it, which you can see because it sticks out of the ground. And I'm pretty sure I caught that pretty well with this device, although when you're going through pure solid rock, I think the data was showing slightly different depths than it likely was, maybe due to how the data is interpreted. Not important. It seemed to work, so I wanted to satisfy myself to the best extent that it works, and I'm interested to learn more, and especially to see how the full process works, because I think there's a bit of an art to it as well as the science. Mark has this ability to interpret the data, and the whole idea of mainstream science of being objective and getting the bias of an observer completely out of the picture is usually unrealistic.
Bullshit.
Yeah.
So that was an example of really, we developed that for what's called the geotechnical industry, which is looking at your top 100 feet for building foundations and so forth, that we did in mostly Abu Dhabi actually work, and it was a nice compact element. but we can open up the frequencies to it. So on that one, we can confidently go down probably to about 1,000 feet, but the resolution is less than the other devices. So we were doing some R&D over in Dubai related to that, and Darren had contacted me after Paul's passing, and where a lot of people kind of Google primary water, you end up at the Institute. It's kind of been spinning its wheels, and so they don't always responsive. And you can go to Primary Water Wells, which is my guy in Las Vegas, Brian Antilla, and myself, my website, and then the primarywater.com goes to dowsing.com. That's the Venus site. I told her to try to fire up for the old primarywater.com, put a lot of her history on there. I mean, extraordinary. She has boxes full of Vern Cameron and Bill Cox's work throughout California. A lot of their projects ended up being NDAs. Private people fly them in and out in jets, say don't talk, and go locate my wells, and probably had their private well drillers. So if you don't think that's going on, you'd be surprised how many wells get drilled out there, and people go for it, right, over the years, and they're not on the well database of the state. But you all can't get your well, right? So anyway, that's kind of the broader primary water story. It's amazing history to it. I've got partners. Australia has its own primary water folks. Lance Endersby, who wrote an amazing book, kind of like Our New Water for the Thirsty World. Robert Gourlay, who's a partner in Sustainable Water Solutions, we call it now, over there, 3 years and running. Phenomenal work. And starting to work with tribes there who, like here, got pushed onto not very low performing land and don't have the money, so we're coming in, locating with them wells to then add value and generate valuable property and put them into portfolios of productive land and start bringing investments into that. Some folks are talking to Navajo again right now about reviving some of that. Everyone knows they have water. Phoenix has been trying to buy their water rights for a long time, and unfortunately they've been saying no, we don't want to sell our water rights to you guys. Real quick, Needles, California, in the drought was going dry. Needles on the Colorado River, they cannot touch the river. Los Angeles bought those water rights a long time ago. That's how insane the water rights is. I do a lot of work up in Utah with my good Mormon buddies, and I tell them all, sorry folks, the biggest casino in the West is not Las Vegas. It's the water rights casino, and it's even more immoral than casinos. And they're like, yeah, we know. Anybody who has the money or the lawyers can go out and play the game and get their water rights. So we're up against it again. Yeah, okay, everybody's going to breathe easier now because you had a big winter and 300% snowpack, and it's been a nice long winter, not like the one 4 or 5 years ago that almost broke the Oroville Dam. Remember, it melted too soon, and that dam almost went. Can you imagine if that had fully gone? Woo, right? You talk about water rates up in Panic City. And so, yeah, it's back, but there's enough headlines going, don't count on it forever. Drought is the norm in desert and semi-arid areas. So, start things outside the box. But their way of thinking outside the box is how many more ways can you drink your brown water? And how many more ways can you shove it into your aquifer? And now after post-COVID, you wonder, are they really cleaning everything out of it? Doubtful. So how about this pure, pristine water in our earth? Go find it, bring it up, and add it to our hydrological cycle. That's the promise of primary water. Almost always on high zones, gravity feed it from there. It's under pressure, put simple pumps on it, the solar, you're off and running. So we'll be able to go walk now. Anybody can walk around with the Gamma. We did do a walkabout yesterday, and it produced a nice map, and Patrick was with me, kind of get an understanding of the highs and lows. Is it a particular number that's important? No, everything's relative. This area was in the 80s, 90s, right? Suddenly you're going up to 110, 120 natural gamma, and then we drop within 50 feet to 60. Wow, that's a dramatic drop, right? What is causing that? And that's what geophysics is all about, looking for these anomalies, trying to figure out what's causing that, right? It has a 2-inch by 2-inch crystal in the photomultiplier tube that goes down there. And Robert Mayer, if you ever have a chance to go see him in Bavaria there in Germany, he's just one of those unique Bavarian minds. And he knows how to grow that crystal and use certain frequencies, resonant frequencies, to get that crystal to talk with water. So he'll buy a bunch of them and he'll calibrate and test them, and he has to toss a lot of them, which is why the system's fairly expensive, because you know, growing those crystals to talk to water is not easy. So here is the let me see it a little bit here, view full screen. Maybe that's about as big as we can get. And so we were walking the property, and that's kind of the driveway there. Okay, we're coming down from here, up around, whoa! We're jumping up to 100, almost 120 here. And the orchard's kind of over here, right up here along that boundary. And there's some orchard here, and then the pool's here. And then just drop, drop, drop. I backtrack, drop, 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 come out, backtrack. There it is. So water's most likely going right between the strong gradient or potentially on the low spot. We'll have to see when we go up there with the passive seismic. So that's what we'll do now, and everybody can check out the G. It's called the G Explorer, Gamma Explorer, and then we'll do a passive seismic line. And so I'm walking this property, you know, and everything's kind of 80, 90 background, and then suddenly I'm going up to 100, you know, 10, 20 as I go up the hill. I'm going, shoot, I was hoping for a drop up the hill, and then we keep going up the hill. There's a kind of a dip, 60, and 100 feet. What's causing that? Natural gamma is just everywhere. Why? So two things. It's either the rock has changed, and the one rock has more emission or other, or Mr. Waters down there dampening, blocking gamma ray. So now I'm going to come with this guy and say, well, let's see if we've got a weak zone over there in the kind of fracture zone we're looking for. Right. And now, as they say, 1 + 1 is H2O. If the gamma and the RAP are going, there it is. And then your geology, your surface indicators, dowsing, right? I don't mind going to a big property. Dowsers already hit it. They're good at finding these zones, right? And that's kind of their sixth sense. But they don't always get on top of the real deep fracture. And that's the key on this. Get on top of that, maximize volume and quality, right? Pressure, static head is low. So what are you at now? Kind of hanging around, right? Hanging around 90s. I kind of had a low over there, but there's a lot of water. So I was like, yeah, probably more affected by water.
It'll pick up surface water as well.
It can, especially puddled water.
Yeah.
You know, and things like that. Or if you're walking slow and you go over a water pipe, it'll pick it up.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So it doesn't help necessarily with depth. It can see deep water, but you know, that's the thing. Is this guy starts helping me with depth.
That's where that comes in, right.
Now I can, and drillers are always like, wow, you guys were predicting, you know, formation changes better than anybody we've ever seen. Because we can process it and look for like the formation change. And that's very hard to do. As fast and as cheap as this. So now, let's come back over this hillside here. So, you know, you gotta be a little careful when you're on properties like, obviously this is poured concrete. It could give you a different reading, especially if it was a blacktop with bitumen in it and so forth. I would stop it and then start it, right? So now, let's see what happens here. What's our number?
You're at 90, 95.
Okay, let's walk right up over this hill. And again, we like high points. We see this having been made by Earth's natural hydraulic system, pushing all this up when it was made. So I'm like, where's the fault? Where's the fracture up here? And so it's, there's our dip. What's our numbers?
So you're at 114, 115.
There we go. That's right. So I'm going, man, it's high here. And oftentimes on a fault, you'll get one side very high, one side low. So I'm going, all right, let's keep walking. Right, I hit upwards, upper 100 teens. We can see the replication of the data from yesterday's day. What kind of numbers?
We're at 90, 80.
90, 80. Did you hear that?
85, 83.
83.
80, 79.
79.
76.
76.
Okay, it's going.
And about in here, right?
Yeah. So
keep walking and then come back. Right in the kind of here is our about of a. Suddenly we went from a 50 drop of natural background gamma. Why would that occur? So we'll drop a flag here. Keep walking that way all the way to the end of the line and come back, and then walk all the way to the high zone just to prove to yourself.
Want to do that over there?
Yeah, what we'll do is we'll drop one here, and then I'll just lay these guys out.
So right here, you're going down to 60.
There it is, right? Even lower. 60, right?
60.
Here, I'll stay there.
61, right over here. So as I was walking, I went down to 61. Then
You
back
saw
up
it,
to
right?
70.
You saw it, right? It's just, and remember, up there we're at almost 120, right? 1 teens?
Yeah.
That's almost 100% change.
Right.
In a very small area, right? Keep going there and let me know by those bushes. Are you kind of finally out of it, I think? But anyway, high, low, what is causing that trend, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll do one more. Yeah, so you're always asking like where are your pipes, where's your infrastructure,
Right. 'Cause
especially on
there's-
like commercial farms.
It ends right
Because
there
it'll
on
dip
this
down
line, all
if
across
it's a
the
big
fence.
pipe, right? But I can see my drip here. Right? What number? See that? Now we're back up, right? So now let's try to figure out what's going on. Okay. Yeah, it was perfect. Same. Almost to 120, down to 60. Why would it do that, right? It's such a relatively small area. All right, now let's go find out what's down there. Mr. Water. Okay, so I was just the same, you know, nothing happened between yesterday and today. The same trend I saw yesterday, right? And then boom, and we collected a whole bunch. That's a file now right there. So you know, actually, if you want, while we're doing this, if anybody wants, just kind of walk the. I only would perimeter. So if you want to walk amongst the rows of the orchard, you're like, yeah, hey, I walked enough, man.
I'll do it again.
Beer time. No. But anyway, if anybody walks, I didn't hit like down in there, and you know, there's kind of, you can kind of curve up and down just to see what's going on. But that's what I want to see is if the trend is coming like that. I think the trend, whatever we're looking at, because I kind of saw a low down there with that. Is it a willow? Down there. So you might pick that up on that side. Okay. This will take a little while to maybe like this. Whoa! Look at that. It's going right in. Okay. Line 1. Okay. Enter. Whoop. All right. Now, you know, I'll do this at, you know, go ahead and do yours at, let's do it at 3,600 hertz.
3,600
okay.
seems to work good on
Yeah,
this
so we can see down 1,000 feet if we feel like.
one.
This thing is really sensitive, so I'm just using a gain of 2.
Okay.
That kind of tells the system it hears a noise above 4,000 hertz. 3,000, it starts to collect. You can see the reaction, about 130 meters. Here's your typical water table, weak zone. Up here, not much action, and then a kick down there. I'm gonna look again, just to see how that works. Repetition, boom, look at that. There's a kick, good signal, not a lot of noise, and I save it. So there's the first point. And this is Blue Hill Farm, right? Wrap, line 1, point 1. We're off and running. So we got our first point, and the focus of the frequency, the resonant frequency is 250 meters, about 800 feet, but you can process almost double. So, and then I'll come over here. Darren will come behind me with his. His is a less sensitive system, mainly for shallow study, but we opened the frequency on it a bit for his scientific use. And I want to see how well his sensors are working, because this guy's real sensitive. Look at that. I go from back there where I barely touched the ground to here. I got a thump. Back there might have been an anthill under there. Okay, no. Alright, you're not happy. Jeez. Look at that. Right here, it doesn't want to. Wants a good thump. Red is overload, so I'm having. It's funny, the earth, right? Just from one spot to the next. Back there, you just saw that tap. This is a heck of a good reading. I'm just surprised. But there should likely be fractures on both sides if this is a pretty good fault through here. I could probably save that. Everything's looking right. I just want to do one more. So this is actually a combined method. It's mostly passive, but I am touching the ground, which is sending, speed of sound in earth has some distance, but mainly very shallow. The rest of the data is just purely passive. Okay.
A little seismic sensing.
Yeah, it's good for geotechnical. It will add value to the shallow data, whoops, we can stab that one in the ground there. That's the other thing, is I should work harder to get to the ground, because there's a lot of
there's a lot of mulch.
mulch. That probably was what was going on there.
These oak trees or something.
There, that's better. Okay. Whoops! I forgot my Garmin, but I'll walk up later with that, and I'll just take a Garmin GPS point, right away point at each spot. I just tapped the battery, so it's working. Okay. And again, this was patented by 2002 in the U.S. and they fought over the business. And Ecor is just a geophysicist, field guy, and he went home. And I found him 2017, and he was on basically a 4th generation and now we're producing the 5th gen this year with kind of integrated GPS and some other features.
Man, the soil looks really good up here for being so much clay right
Right? All this mulch. Whoa, look at that guy.
Big old potato bug.
Oh, yeah, look at that.
Yeah, move the soil, you'll find all sorts of.
Look at that. Sorry, bud, that was totally messed up your day.
Sammy's right back there. It's like.
A little hard.
Oh, yeah.
Here, buddy.
Yeah.
There you go.
Like a potato bug they call
You
it.
get smashed.
Okay, save, 0.4, enter.
Yeah.
Stab that.
Wrong place. That sucks.
Get down there. Okay.
The track is cracking.
So,
This is where it got to be about 60 something.
right, yeah, and then it just kind of stays low, another 60, and then out, this whole kind of that second ridge. Definitely, it was almost a 120 again back there.
It blows out again over down by the streams and propane tank.
At the bottom?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Above the barn? Below it a little bit.
Look at that, 60-meter reaction, 120 meter, starting to see multiple. So this is where a good dowser will say, well, first water is at, so many feet. Second water potential, so many feet. 60, dead on again. Number 5. The good ones can call that out. Right. 1. Yeah. Whoa. Went straight in. I bought an old S-Wing off of eBay. I was the only bidder. So I was like, somebody actually wanted a hammer, and it was, look how well it's made, but it's falling apart on this trip. It was like, amazing, huh? Look at those leather pieces. They went individual. They make really good hammers. Rock hammers. Yeah, it's just so soft right there.
Well, our friend's father-in-law,
Man, it's soft.
worked for the CIA.
That's better. Better contact. So this is the fun part of geophysics. You're definitely on the ground, listening, putting sensors in. So my one Dubai employee is Milan Shrestha, former pool boy, now my Nepalese go-to for field work. 34, no, not an ounce of fat on him, so he's been already to projects in Laos and Madagascar, South Africa, Kenya, like Ryan Antill up in Vegas. I call him primary water jiu-jitsu. He's working on his black belt, and he can collect a lot of data in a day. I'm getting old. Those guys do a good job. It shows you can train anyone. You don't have to have a geophysics background. There are various things, techniques to watch for and this and that, but you can train anybody to get up and running on this. Save, that's number 6. Enter. So Milan's back in Nepal working with our partner there, and they'll have to take 1,000 meters of line to go 200 meters deep. And imagine in that conditions to get 1,000 meters, what's that, 3,500 feet in Nepal, where you can actually get probes in the ground. He goes and runs 1,000 meters in 2 hours. They're there all day with a team of 6, and we've got one guy who goes dink, 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 and collects that to 4 times as deep on the same project. So we're starting to get some good projects there in Nepal. You think, well, they don't need water, they have the Himalayas, but everywhere people are worried about their surface water quality. They want that high quality water coming up, even in the Himalayas. Trying to get that just right. Man, there's so much mulch. Hard to get right to the soil. Right there. Save. 0.7. We like to try to get about 11 points. It's a wide enough line. Get some definition. Comparative points of data. There. That's a little easier. The ground. Yeah, right there. All right. So what, 5-6 seconds, you've got a reading. I've done this with a drill rig on site for geotechnical, and the only data we couldn't clean and process was basically right around the rig. The rest of the plot, we got all totally usable data. So there's some filtering and all that you can do to all this. But most of those frequencies are high, and we're looking lower, like that whatever's going on, chainsaw or whatever over there. Obviously, if somebody's, hammering into the ground near you, that's going to affect you more. But background noise up here in the surface is about 20,000 plus or minus. So when you're listening at 3,600 hertz, it's not really affected by stuff up here other than your shallow data, which we're normally not interested in. We're not expecting to drill 50 feet here. Right there. Try that again. Overload. Say 0.9, enter.
I don't have it started. See, this is started, but this is the low spot.
How you doing? You right behind me? You doing all right? Where's Zarin? Oh, okay.
This spot here was the 60s, and then it kind of goes up, but
Right between where, like?
just in between.
Yeah. Okay.
Would you take from a low spot? Would you start going?
Yeah, so
either
then I like to
direction?
see, because I did walk back and I walked here and I was like, whoop, there it is. Of course, then we have pool, but I did pick up below, I thought, down there.
Yeah,
so
yeah, it does.
I
It's
think
right
the trend, right?
Right there.
Now we've got, because it could be localized or it could be trend, and I think the trend's through there. And obviously if the fence wasn't there, we could walk up and kind of go, aha, right? There's our fracture. And that's what the gamma's so great. It produces that heat map, and you could start to say, okay, and then you design this line. Okay, let me go from high to low, like we're doing now, instead of just randomly picking lines out here. So Igor, obviously, he can use his only instrument here and locate water, but he's taking line, 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 right? I'd rather take fewer of these lines and walk my gamma, get my map, and then strategically do this. Right, and but you could go and do a grid, and once you have 3 lines, you can 3D it. We have some awesome 3D material. Awesome 3Ds, like that one 2,500 gallon per minute free flowing well. Soda Springs, Idaho. Okay.
So you think the actual drill spot would be up there?
Well, the gammas, that's it. Do you go to the lowest gamma, or do you actually see it along the transition? And so it can surprise you a little bit. Sometimes it's not at the lowest, it's right on the transition where you see, oh, and that's because there were probably 2 rocks. One might be a dike, a mineralized rock, and then this one's back to the granite, and so right where they meet. The low might be here, but man, right there is where that water's going. Ah, you're moving separately, I've got a channel, and then off it goes. So we'll see here. We'll keep that with us 11 points, and we'll go process. What do you got on this?
This is I filled this with magnetite sand. I haven't bought a wet
Because you didn't get your weight belt, bro. Look, they're making these online. I bought them. I bought a few. I'll get you one.
I just wrote it on my list of things to buy.
No, I'll get you one. You can have this. I've got a few back home now.
I'm thinking the most cost-effective way would do the copper pipes and let the hot water run.
All right. All right, let's go bring this data to life. always freezes. All right, first Igor software. He writes his own software code. Igor's a great Russian. You know, really cross-trained. And whoops. This is Blue Hill Farm, line 1, okay? I'm converting that to basically comma separated CSV file, so now we're kind of in, what do you call it, spreadsheet format. And now, Blue Hill Farm, wrap, line 1, data core. We can start looking at each shot. So if I get data in from the field, I can kind of see how sloppy they are, what's going on, maybe any electrical, and just keep an eye on the data quality. Yeah, a little bit of cleanup. And then I can look at the spectrum of each shot. This is where it starts to get interesting. We're looking down, I'm gonna go 400 meters. That's 1,300 feet. Here's your surface zone. Look, we have a zone starting at 110 meters that is dressed significantly weaker than this typical weak zone, our water table. That's interesting, right? Right there. That's electrical. I'll delete that out. That point was really interesting, even though it's on our high zone. Look at it staying high. Although, I wonder if I didn't get a great shot there because of the surface. 6, 7, boom. That's electrical right here. Now we're close to our 60 point, and that's at 100. This is 80, 160, 120 meters. Boom. Oh, and look at the deep water around here. Yep. 9, 10. Look at that. Look at the deep water spiking up down 1,000+ feet toward the end there. That's why these guys, when they wanted big water here, they were always going down into that depth when they knew they were on the right structure and they could pull out thousands of gallons a minute. All right, I'm just going to go directly into processing this. Whoop. I'll do cleanup later. Let's just see what it looks like now. Desktop, Blue Hill, wrap, line 1. This is all your geophysics in action. I'm going to go line 1 underscore. I'm just going to take it to 250 meters. That's about 800+ feet. I collected 16,384 points of data for every spot. That's a big spreadsheet in a hurry, right? Zero it out to 32,768, which is our wrap 5. It'll do max resolution. And I'll put a 5 meter spacing, 5 paces. And done. We have a 2D data. Right here is manual. I'm going to get out the electrical. Where's our power up here? Why did I hear some over that one? Is there any, no power lines, right?
No, not in this area.
I picked up some.
With a weed whacker over there.
Yeah, Blue Hill, wrap. Now the coefficient we use is 2,500, and our hertz here in America is 60 hertz. So divide by at 42 meters. If there was really a lot of electrical, I'd see it right there. Nah, we're not getting affected by electrical. A little bit, but not much. So don't have to worry about that. But if we were under, like, you know, power lines and stuff, we'd definitely be clearing that out.
Oh, it's underground from the street.
There, okay, maybe somewhere I got a little bit of it.
It follows the
driveway. Okay, you guys got buried cable. Those are fun. At least with the above ground we can see them, but yeah. But we pick it up. Okay, and now see all that? I'm just gonna do 3-point smoothing, looking for the trends. Boom, and then one more step. Because sometimes we tap lightly, sometimes we tap hard. I'm just evening that out statistically. The amplitude of the spectrum there from the tap, and double click. Done. So FRN filtered and normalized. Let's go look at this in living color now.
Here's the step where I'm not as fast as Mark.
It's a lot of tap till you just done it enough. And it's like, okay, all the little...
I don't know if I'm up for this with an audio.
Yeah. What happened to your 2D profile? It looks a little drunk. Okay, ABC, and right here, 2.5, finish. And there we have a 2D profile. Left axis, scaling, and there, reverse that. There's the top, label, show, scaling, and we're 5 meter spacing. 50. This is just the labeling at the top.
So this is all going underground.
Now we're left to right. Well, in fact, I'll switch the top just so we're oriented because we went that way, right? So I'll flip that there. So 0.0 meters is that flag. 1, 2, 3, 4 going that way, right? And that was a 50 meter line using 5 meter spacing. Let me add some color right there. Show label and wrap. Fill the contours. Oops, right there. Look at that. Beauty. Nice. And it's shallow, but it's got good deep connectivity right there. Advanced, edit. Add. Apply, okay. Do a different presentation, what's called color relief versus contours. Left axis, reverse, top, label, show, scaling, 550.
Special field laptops.
Yeah. You know, I buy them used internet, $400. Tough books, but they're the light ones. Some tough books you could drop out of a helicopter or airplane, right? They're just too heavy, you know. This model, which they discontinued, is like perfect. You can just kind of walk with it. Okay.
Is this Windows?
Yeah. I used to just keep it in Windows 7 and don't upgrade, and now Igor's done his software, so it works okay with Windows 10. It gets a little buggy in English versus the Ruski.
It's got an i5 in it? Are you running i5?
Yeah, it's that.
What's that? I don't know what
Okay.
His processor.
All right, so what we've produced is a scale of strength to weakness, mechanical strength to weakness. So all of this greenish, right, is all down here. These colors are all mechanically, all this yellow in this format. That's contour, this is color relief, I stretched it. Is all similar competent rock, and then suddenly you have a massively weaker zone. Typically you would expect that weak zone up here, our water table, right? And that's when it rains, it pours, and that's where your vadose zone is. That's where the water seeps to most of it to its maximum. Suddenly we have that, right? Picked up by 3 different points. So there's 2 things that is. That's either a bat cave, that's either a cavity, or it's water, right? There are examples around here of, this isn't karstic environment, which is limestone. This is hard rock. So I'm really doubtful. It's fairly shallow, which is exciting. 50 meters is 165 feet. So that's a shallow well. And look, it seems to have some connectivity down to deep down here, 800 feet below it. Okay.
Is that the second to last? Or is
that's actually our, top, reverse, and grid lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th point. So we'll go find point number 5 and put that white flag where that guy is.
So we're looking at cross section.
Cross section. So I'm up here. I'm here walking.
Oh, I see.
Right. In fact, I can do it like this. Yeah, and then we're looking down into the earth. In this case, 250 meters. I could process that deeper. Let me get this line here. This is how I usually label all this up. Boom, boom, boom. Let's grab that. Let's see. All right. And so that we're walking up here from right that way to that way.
And does that shape tell you anything? That sort of like mushroom cloud?
This whole thing is the
I like the
connectivity.
I like the connectivity. It's not fantastic. It was very good. Clearly, I've got explanation of why we've got this strong change high to low. You know, and if someone did a very intense, narrow geological map, a high scale, they would use, you know, airborne geophysics and that. They would probably see some strikes here. And if it's inferred, they put them dashed lines. If they know it's a fault, it's a full line, right? And they'll come into areas and you know, can make a good geological map. Go on the ground, look for physical. Now, all this has been farmed, so you can't see all what was here before that may have been better indicators. But so relative mechanical strength to weakness. That's what we're looking at here. And so here's your scales. You know, that's off, you know, the charts up here. Why is that so weak? It's like I say, it's two things. It's cave or it's water. The gamma's going between here and here, right down it's going. And so we've got probably, look at this, it's very hard rock. Some kind of dike is there, come up, right? And over time, it could be very mineralized. That's why it's so high. And we're seeing our map like red, you know, and then the drop. And so that's probably a dike down in there. And on the water, sometimes you get water on both sides. This one, the water's over there. And the gamma definitely confirmed that, right?
Great.
1 + 1 is H2O. Get your dowser up here, see if he likes it. Right? And so that's what we do. We go into the field. The gamma is just an absolute secret weapon because the way it's built, 35 years, and we just heard a little bit about resonant frequencies on that water. He, while that crystal's growing, puts a resonant frequency through it.